What's going on, everyone? Today, we are talking receivers that I think are overvalued over on Underdog Fantasy. These are guys that I do not think you should be drafting at all. Be sure to stay till the end of the video because I saved the best for last. Either way, though, before we get into it, if you guys could, go down, give this video a like. I'm answering every single comment. If you guys have any questions related to Dynasty, trades, the draft, anything, please let me know down below. And if you think I'm wrong on a player, please let me know down below as well, because I'm always open to new opinions. And subscribe to the channel, turn that notification bell on so you do not miss another video. With that, though, guys, let's hop into our first player, and that is Odell Beckham Jr. And OBJ is somebody I love. His first 3 seasons were among the best I've ever seen at wide receiver, and he did it for my team. I love OBJ. Then the Giants elect to trade him to the Cleveland Browns. It doesn't work out in Cleveland, which you could chalk it up to OBJ being not a great wide receiver. Sure, you could chalk it up to Baker Mayfield. You could chalk it up to a combination of the two. But either way, OBJ faltered consistently with the Browns. And I think a lot more of it was on Baker Mayfield than OBJ. But even still, he falters. Then he goes to the Rams. And while people remember OBJ being great on the Rams, and I'll give him credit where it's due, he was good. But during the regular season, during the last 7 games of the season, he only averaged 38 yards a game, which is not what you're expecting for the wide receiver 49 over on Underdog Fantasy. Furthermore, OBJ has a massive injury list that I think scares me off of him almost entirely. I mean, his injury history is more than I can fit on the entire screen. His injury history is among the highest in all of football. And not only that, he's a 30-year-old going on 31 wide receiver who hasn't played football since the Super Bowl in 2021 against the Bengals. I mean, he was out all of last season with an ACL injury. And this isn't his first ACL injury either. This is his second torn ACL that he's coming off of. This Ravens offense, well, I think it will be a very above average offense in terms of total points, total output. I am a little bit concerned with the other receiving options that are in Baltimore. I mean, we're talking about a team with Rashad Bateman who has shown promise, but hasn't really proven at the NFL level. I mean, he could be a bust. We just don't know. And then you have Zay Flowers, a first-round pick drafted this most recent season after they sign OBJ. So after they sign OBJ, they still feel the need to go out and get more at the wide receiver position. And then you also add in the fact that they do have Mark Andrews. There is so many mouths to feed in this offense, and I think that is something that is a massive concern for Odell Beckham Jr. Now, to OBJ's credit, he does see Todd Monken coming in to be the new offensive coordinator, so we will see Lamar Jackson jump from about 400 passing attempts to probably somewhere in the range of 500 passing attempts, which would put him around 12th highest at the position in terms of total pass attempts, which I think would be pretty good. But we're not talking 600 pass attempts. We're not talking top 5 at the position where guys like Joe Burrow, Kirk Cousins, and Pat Mahomes operate. And the guys that are at 500 total passing attempts, it's Derek Carr, it's Russell Wilson. And none of these 3 players have been able to sustain 2 great fantasy performers. And we know for almost a fact that Mark Andrews is going to be the number 1 option in this offense. And I would speculate that Zay Flowers probably is the number 2 option coming in almost right away. OBJ will most likely be the number 3 option in this offense, potentially even the number 4 if Rashad Bateman comes in. And that really is what scares me about Odell Beckham. I think he will absolutely have boom games, which I think is a little more valuable in Underdog Fantasy, which makes sense. It's probably one of the reasons why he is coming off the board as the wide receiver 49. But I'm not willing to take a chance at a guy with a massive injury history, a guy who hasn't performed at a not even elite level, but I would say an above average wide receiver level since 2019, the last season where he had over 1,000 yards, and a guy who's going into an offense that historically has not passed the ball at all. That's why I'm off of OBJ this season, despite being a Giants fan, despite all the bias I could possibly have. I just can't draft him where he's currently going over on Underdog Fantasy. Let me know down below what you guys think, because I know there are still some OBJ truthers out there. I mean, looking at his ADP, there just have to be OBJ truthers. I personally cannot buy into it. Either way, let's move on to my next player, and that is Jameson Williams. And well, yes, Jameson Williams' talent is immense. I mean, we saw him have a dominant season over at Alabama where he had 1,500 total yards. That's the last we've seen of Jameson Williams. I mean, this last season, he comes in and has 9 total targets. And yes, he was coming back from an ACL injury. They wanted to work him in slow. It makes sense that he really didn't do much this past season. But now he's suspended for another 6 games because he gambled. And if you're taking a guy who's not going to perform for the first 6 weeks of the season, and then after that, we really don't know if he's going to be great year one, I am not comfortable taking him as the wide receiver 47. And Jameson Williams' value over time on Underdog Fantasy will almost certainly go down. As people drafting on Underdog Fantasy get closer to the season, they're going to realize, oh my God, the NFL season's getting close, and I'm not going to have Jameson Williams for the first 6 weeks of the season, meaning I'm missing out on 6 weeks of production from a position on the draft board where you are getting good players still, and players that will probably give you fantasy points over on Underdog Fantasy for 3 weeks of the NFL season that you're just simply not getting from Jameson Williams. And well, yes, he does have boom potential at the end of the season. I don't think it's worth sacrificing the potential for you to go out and make the playoffs in your league, simply because if you don't make it there, there's no chance Jameson Williams provides you any value. But if you have a guy like Tyler Boyd instead, you have value throughout the whole season, and your odds to make the fantasy football playoffs are a lot higher than if you wait and sit on Jameson Williams for 6 weeks. Again, his ADP will come down as we get closer to the season, so I might be drafting Jameson Williams in August, in July, but right now I simply cannot draft him at his current ADP. Let me know about that one down below, because Jameson Williams is a guy with supreme talent. I mean, drafted 12th overall and could be a difference maker, but either way, I can't draft him at this current point. Either way, let's move on. We do have Courtland Sutton, another guy in this range, and Courtland Sutton, a guy who I could actually understand he is a lot more palatable at this range, but either way, this team's first move with Sean Payton as head coach is to bring in another wide receiver. Jerry Jeudy is already pretty much confirmed as the wide receiver one. He proved that last season, having almost 1,000 yards despite missing 2 games. He's built rapport with Russell Wilson, and now you have this wide receiver 2 position to figure out. And what is the first thing that they do? They bring in a wide receiver in Marvin Mims, which is very concerning for Courtland Sutton. Marvin Mims, a good player in his own right, a guy a lot of people in the Dynasty community were decently high on coming into the season, and he fills a role in this offense that, yes, it is different from Courtland Sutton, but at the same time, I am not taking a chance on a 27-year-old wide receiver who has not played well since 2019, where he had 1,100 yards, but after that, a torn ACL, then has never eclipsed 850 yards in a season. I'm not willing to take a chance on him. Maybe if they do elect to trade him and he does end up on a team with a huge wide receiver need, sure, then we reevaluate. It's a different story. But as of right now, he's potentially in a role with an offense that we really don't know. There's a lot of question marks, and he might be the wide receiver 3 in this offense. I'm not willing to take a chance on him, simply because his ADP is way too high. I mean, coming off as a wide receiver 46, I would much rather take a gamble on some of these other players than Courtland Sutton, a guy who's never been a top 24 wide receiver in the NFL in fantasy football. I just can't do it. I can't justify it where he's going. If he was going as a wide receiver 65, I would say, sure, screw it. Why not take a chance on a guy who does have some potential and did go as a second-round pick in the NFL draft? But right here, right now, I can't do it personally. Either way, let's move on to my second most overvalued player over on Underdog right now, and it is Michael Pittman. And I think Michael Pittman, a good wide receiver, borderline great wide receiver, but the offense he's in is not going to be structured for him to do a ton, especially this season. You have Anthony Richardson coming in, probably starting at some point during the season, and I know Shane Steichen, I think he's going to be a great head coach, to be honest. I think Shane Steichen's going to be a phenomenal head coach. And we saw what he was able to do with A.J. Brown. Michael Pittman kind of fits a similar role in the offense to A.J. Brown. But at the same time, year one, I don't think you're going to be getting much production out of Anthony Richardson, at least through the air, which is concerning for Michael Pittman. I think this offense will rank near the bottom in terms of passing yards, pass attempts per game, simply because they are trying to get Anthony Richardson adjusted, maybe give him some short routes, but primarily just get him comfortable out there rather than trying to contend this year, which I think makes a lot of sense from team perspective. But for all these wide receivers, I am pretty concerned. I mean, you have Josh Downs in this offense now. You have Alec Pierce, who they spent a second-round pick on last year. And now you have Michael Pittman as well. There are 3 wide receivers in this offense with decent mouths to feed. And yes, Michael Pittman will be the wide receiver 1 in this offense, but I'm just not sure he will produce at a high level considering the amount they will most likely run the ball. I mean, they're going to be relying on the run almost exclusively this season with Anthony Richardson, with Jonathan Taylor, and with their O-line that, well, it had a disappointing last season, should look to rebound and come back as at least a league average offensive line. And I think if you look at an offense that's going to be near the bottom in passing, probably above the Bears last season, but bottom 5 in total passing yards with a rookie quarterback. I'm just not excited about where Michael Pittman is going off the board right now. As the wide receiver 28, I would prefer Jackson Smith and Jigba over him. I prefer Brendan Ayuk over him. I would prefer Tyler Lockett over him. I'd even probably prefer Mike Evans over him, because at least with Mike Evans, you've seen 1,000 yards very, very consistently. Although the ceiling is probably not that high, it is most likely similar to Michael Pittman, yet he is a grosser name. That's why I'm not a fan of Michael Pittman this season. I think the passing is going to be very, very low in this offense, and I think year one, they are just going to be trying to get Anthony Richardson comfortable with a lot of short routes. And I think that is why you cannot be drafting Michael Pittman. The ceiling is simply not there right now, and the floor, it is okay, but it's not going to be great either. And at the wide receiver 28, I would much rather be taking either higher ceiling plays or higher floor plays, and Michael Pittman simply does not offer either. That's why I'm off Michael Pittman. I've not drafted him in a single league. Either way, let's move on to our last player, and this is the highest player going over on Underdog Fantasy. Right now, he's coming off as the wide receiver 19. It is DJ Moore, and DJ Moore is a guy I am terrified to draft. I don't own him in a single league right now, and let me know down below if you guys think I'm wrong on this, because honestly, I could see DJ Moore outperforming his ADP. Let's go over the positives of DJ Moore first, because DJ Moore has been a great wide receiver in the NFL since he really came into the league. I mean, this is somebody who had 1,100 yards 3 of the last 4 seasons. He's been a phenomenal wide receiver with absolutely abysmal quarterback play. I mean, we're talking guys like Kyle Allen, washed Cam Newton. It has not been good for DJ Moore. And yet I am still scared of DJ Moore as a player, simply because this offense is not a pass-first offense in the slightest. I mean, we saw the Bears average the least amount of passing yards in the last decade. Yes, this will go up with the addition of DJ Moore. You do have Chase Claypool for another season, a full season, to develop chemistry with Justin Fields, and you do have Darnell Mooney coming back from a pretty significant injury. But I don't think this passing offense is going to be a lot more prevalent. They were at 130 passing yards per game this last season. Let's say that goes up, and I'm being generous here, to 180, 190 passing yards. Is that going to sustain volume for DJ Moore on a weekly basis? Maybe. It's possible, but at the wide receiver 19, I am not willing to take a shot on a guy who might get decent volume on a week-to-week basis, who is going from an offense that was historically bad passing the football to an offense that now potentially will only be bottom 10. I'm not willing to take a shot on it. The Lions still project to be a pretty bad team this upcoming season. I mean, maybe they surprise some people. Maybe Justin Fields is better than we think. But at this current moment, they just won 3 football games last season. So I'm not willing to take a chance on a team that does not look all that great. You have a defensive head coach, and we don't even know how much they are going to be passing the football this season. I don't think it's going to be all that much, especially considering in 15 games this last season, Justin Fields had 318 pass attempts. Let's say we project that out to 17 games, that's about 350 pass attempts. And let's say we give him 75 more pass attempts. That's 425 total pass attempts, which ranks him below what Mac Jones did last season. I cannot take a guy in an offense that just threw for 130 passing yards last season. I just can't do it to myself, especially not at the wide receiver 19. You're probably drafting him right around near his ceiling, and that very much concerns me with DJ Moore. Either way, again, let me know what you guys think, because obviously there are people that love DJ Moore out here. He would not be going as the wide receiver 19, and again, there are pros to DJ Moore's profile, a great wide receiver. Either way though, guys, that's going to be it from me. Hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, go smash that like button. I'm answering every single comment, so if you guys have any questions, let me know. Subscribe to the channel. It is the #1 way to support me. It's completely free, and you can always change your mind later. With that though, guys, as always, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.